2. Which is my camera, 4 or 2?
You are on 4.
Okay.
Coming up.
Okay. Hello viewers, welcome to our program Immigration and You. I am your immigration attorney Michael Phulwani, and once again we have with us attorney David Nachman. Mr. Nachman, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Now in our today's program, firstly we are going to tell you cutoff dates for the month of September 2011. Then there's a very, very important subject that we want to talk about, and I know that many of our viewers will be helped very much, and stay tuned, don't go away, because something that many of viewers will benefit from that, what we call a memorandum on prosecutorial discretion. So let's start with the cutoff dates for the month of September 2011, but before that, this is a Labor Day weekend. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and I know David wants to say something about the Labor Day.
Well, I think first of all, and most importantly, Michael, we want to wish everyone a nice barbecue, that they enjoyed their barbecue, and we also want to send out word to domestic labor and international labor that's helped to make this country great. Obviously, the infrastructure could not be created, the ideas could not be brought to this country without both domestic and foreign labor. So with respect to that, we thank all the laborers for all their hard work this weekend.
And as a laborer myself on immigration matters, I also thank you and join you in this message. Okay, here is the cutoff dates for the month of September 2011. In the family preference categories, the first preference, which is for the unmarried sons and daughters over the age of 21, unfortunately, no movement. Date remains the same for all the countries, May 1, 2004. Family 2A category, which is for the sons and daughters and spouses of green card holders, sons and daughters under the age of 21. This category is a very good news. It advances by 4 months and 1 week to December 1, 2008, which is a very good news, and hopefully it continues to advance further in the same speed in coming months. The family 2B category, which are the unmarried sons and daughters over the age of 21 of green card holders, unfortunately no movement again in this. Date remains the same, July 1, 2003. Family third preference, which is the married sons and daughters of US citizens, once again, bad news, it is no movement, August 22, 2001, that means a waiting period of 8-9 years or more. Family fourth preference, which is the brothers and sisters of US citizens, advances only 1 week to April 15, 2000. Now, in the employment preference categories, the first preference, which is priority workers, is current for all the countries. The employment second preference, which is for the advanced degree holders, persons have a master's degree or a PhD, that category, there is no movement for India, unfortunately, remains the same at April 15, 2007, but it is current for all other countries. Employment third preference, the professionals and skilled workers, advances by 5 weeks, which is okay, and the date remains same. Date is now July 8, 2002. The other workers, which we call a EW category, these are the people whose requirement for a labor certification is less than 2 years, or unskilled workers. That category, there is no movement. For most of the countries in the world, it is August 1, 2005. There it moved 3 months. But for India, there is no movement. Date remains the same, June 1, 2002. The fourth preference category, which is special immigrants, which include priests, religious workers, and all that is current. And the investors for $500,000 or $1 million is current, has always remained current, and hopefully will continue to be current. So this is the information on your cutoff dates. Now we're going to move to a subject David, which is very, very important to our viewers. Now, what is this subject? There is a prosecution, its memo is a prosecutional discretion under which the ICE and other enforcement officers can be more liberal or can exercise or should exercise, as a matter of fact. It's a guidance that President Obama they made a statement in the White House, and the Immigration Service is fully aware of it, that this is not just a advisory only, there's some force behind that they are actually told to follow this kind of memorandum. Now, what this memorandum basically contains is many situations, and I'm going to have David then talk more about that. Persons, let us say, arrested, should the immigration ICE people arrested or not arrested and let them go? Persons who are already in deportation proceedings, can that deportation proceeding be terminated by the judge based upon this guidance? Person against whom there's already a deportation order, is it possible to get that deportation proceeding opened by making a joint motion? There is a case going on. There is something called deferred status, under which for some humanitarian reasons they don't want to deport the person and let them maintain the status quo. So there are a lot of many very important, interesting, valuable points that I think David and me are going to develop further. David.
Well, I think that, Michael, if we could maybe just take a minute and just go back sort of down memory lane and take a trip and review the history of prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutorial discretion sort of became an issue back when John Lennon was being brought into the United States. And what happened was that they brought to the forefront the issue that the government had the right to decide what cases were high-profile cases versus low-profile cases. And then, of course, back in 2001, after 9/11, what happened was prosecutorial discretion sort of took a back seat. Later on, it became more important when Julie Myers was in charge of ICE. And then, of course, coming forward, John Morton, who's in charge of ICE, on June 17th, promulgated this prosecutorial memo with a list of very discrete, very clear indicia, things that he felt were things that a person could look at to decide, the administrative agencies could decide whether or not they wanted to take an action or not. And I think what we should do is maybe go through some of these indicia, because probably our viewing audience might say, oh, that's my case. Something in there is something that would be in my case. And that's something that obviously they would want to talk to a qualified immigration lawyer about, because some of these humanitarian concerns or some of these indicia might be things that affect them. So for example, what are some of these factors? Well, the first factor, probably the most important one, which affects something that a lot of people are concerned about, is the DREAM Act. So, for example, individuals, kids who are going to school, have done well. ICE has said that they are not going to not take a position, but they will be more liberal in possibly dismissing cases that the DREAM Act kids are involved in. Also, people who are in the military. Also, individuals who are taking their caretakers for the elderly or for people who are sick in the United States. And those are things also that we can look at and see whether we can use these factors.
Many humanitarian kind of considerations are taken
Correct.
into consideration. By the way, you mentioned John Lennon, and that reminds me, when I was there, that the attorney that was handling this case was Leon Wiles.
Yes.
And the judge who worked for me, as a matter of fact, after retirement, Ira Fieldsteel, he was the immigration judge also, and he worked for my office as a off counsel for some period of time.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting story. It takes me back to those times.
Many years, right?
Many years back, so that's interesting. Now, basically, I mean, we have on this station, TV station, done a lot of programs on the memorandums that have come from time to time on the priorities, where the government made a priority that we should not just spend a lot of time on arresting just people who are illegally staying here. Because they said, first of all, our main focus is on persons that have committed crimes, terrorists, and those who were previously deported, then just going after. So this has been going, as David said, from time since then, they have been paying more attention to that. Politically, what happened is a lot of these Mexican groups expressed their unhappiness with President Obama, that he has not done anything. He promised the CIR, he promised the DREAM Act, and against that, he promising that on the other side, enforcement has been very big. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have been deported, and the ICE and the government authorities continued that policy. So I think finally the message got to the president that it's very important, even politically, even the elections coming in, to have that kind of group with him. And that's why now they are putting some teeth into that kind of policy guidance by issuing this prosecutionary discretion. What does that mean? Is basically who's the prosecutor. A prosecutor is a person that prosecutes, handles the case on behalf of the government. It's a government, you can say lawyer, or the officers, enforcement, that ICE people that do kind of these enforcement activities. Now, there always has been a discretion. I mean, the prosecutors had some discretion always in whether they are forcing the deportation or letting them have a voluntary departure or just closing administratively the case. But that was very vague. I mean, from officer to officer, person to person, it varied. There was no official policy guidance. But this memorandum, David, I think, puts some kind of official guidance that how they should exercise their discretion. They should be more liberal. So people that are watching this program today, and they're always worried someday I'm driving, the police may arrest me, they may report to the immigration, or they are sitting in a restaurant and they come and in whatever circumstances they get arrested or they get prosecuted or they are put in deportation proceedings, they're always worried. But don't you think, David, that with this prosecutorial discretion memo coming in and being enforced, these our viewers should be much more at ease than they were prior to this?
Well, Michael, you're absolutely right. I mean, what's interesting about what's happening with the prosecutorial discretion now is that there is real effect that we're seeing, real effect in the courts, where attorneys who are handling cases for removal can make claims in court and try to get cases closed or to try to use the prosecutorial policies to further arguments for joint motions to reopen. And these are very significant and important to our viewers. So there is a bite here, and that's probably the most important thing.
The teeth into this.
Exactly. There's real teeth behind what's going on here. And however, I think that, and I do understand your point, I don't know that it means that we should tell our viewing audience, relax. I think what it is that we are telling our viewing audience that in the event, God forbid, that they've been put into a removal proceeding, there may be arguments that we can marshal on their behalf to try to get those cases closed. Humanitarian things that before were not necessarily as strong an argument.
Let me say directly to our viewers like this. Let us say that you are arrested by ICE for something, and you contact us or a good lawyer who understands this prosecutorial discretion issue, that we can contact ICE and based upon this memorandum, ask them if there's nothing serious not to pursue the case and release the person. Let us say that you are put in the proceedings, in the deportation removal proceedings, and we can always go before a judge and tell the judge based upon this that you should administratively close the case. And most of the time the prosecution, the trial attorney of the government may also say, okay, the government has no objection. Now that's the plan that we have.
Right.
Let us say somebody that already has a deportation order. It's a little tough one there. But even in those situations, based upon equities, person is married to a U.S. citizen, has a U.S. citizen wife, U.S. citizen children, and nothing, he did serious crime or anything, just because he applied for a political asylum and he was put in deportation, there's outstanding order of deportation. There is a good issue, there's a good point that we could go to a trial attorney and make a joint motion, because joint motion is needed to open any previous deportation proceeding.
Right.
And we prepare a motion and go to the trial attorney, explain to him, and please, I think this is a situation that warrants some discretion on the basis of this memo. And the trial attorney agrees, he says the government has no objection, he signs, both parties sign. I sign or David signs and the trial attorney signs, and then we go to the judge and file a joint motion. Most likely the judge will go along when both parties are agreeable.
Of
In
course,
Hindi say,
right.
Miyan biwi razi to kya karega kazi. Means if husband and wife are okay, then what is the judge going to do? So that's a Urdu saying of that. So that's how this is going to work practically for our viewers. Keep these things in mind. If you run into that kind of situation, feel free to contact us and then we can assist.
I think, Michael, the key to what you're saying here is that prosecutorial discretion is handled at many, many administrative levels.
Right.
It's handled from the very lowest person who picks up the individual and puts them into the proceeding, the LEA, law enforcement agent, all the way to the trial attorney, all the way up to the judge, all the way up possibly, and we haven't seen this take effect yet, but possibly on appeal, when these cases get up to the appeals court, the judges and the staff of the judges who make these determinations on appeals cases can take into account the prosecutorial policies and underpinnings when they're making their determinations. And for this reason, it's a tremendously valuable weapon for immigration lawyers to use to protect their clients.
What do you say to this opposition to this kind of policy from Republicans? You know that some of the Republicans who are extremely against the immigration have raised voices that President Obama is now trying to backdoor policy. What do you say to that?
It's a great question, Michael. And one of the things I think that is very important here is that this is not an amnesty. It's absolutely critical to understand that the prosecutorial memo is absolutely not an amnesty in any way, shape, or form. In fact, not only is it not an amnesty, there is no affirmative way to make a claim under this prosecutorial memo.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Marit. We are running out of the time. We thank you for watching the program. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, if you want to contact us, please feel free to do so. If you have questions, we'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Interesting.
It is.
Do you know what I'm doing? I think I told you, I'm telling Lutka to go back, check all our cases.
Yes, yes.
And to submit
Same thing we're going to do.
application.
When I
Yeah.
get time, I'm going to pull all, not only cases, all the consultations.
I get Lutka, Janina, and Nicole on board, then we can do that. Yeah, for
Let's
sure.
plan jointly a meeting and see readiness, starting from the point that the client.
Generate
See, one
business.
thing that I'm telling you, because it's not just you and me, there'll be other lawyers who are also pulling, pushing and all that. We should have a plan in which a client comes in. We should have a plan. All right, it's done. Call him in right away. If you give 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, next week, he's afraid, he's worried, he wants to do today. He wants to come and return you today. So we got to sit down.
Well, it's not even him, it's his family who comes and gives you the money. Yeah, I agree.
So we do the Hindi or we do English, another one,
Finished English.
and then we do the
This
Hindi.
is September 11th,
Okay. Anything?
Okay.
Oh, 9/11.
9/11. That day, a lot of
Okay.
things are going on at the.
Right, the World Trade Center, there's a special,
Lot of. special
it's
about
actually going to be on 9/11?
9/11, yeah,
Okay.
right on the same Sunday.
So we go back to the second topic. I don't have any. You have
10 years,
anything?
right? 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have
Okay,
anything.
so
You have anything
I have
material on
something to
that?
say. Oh, material? What,
The H-1B entrepreneur.
we can talk about that, we can talk about the ICE notices, we can talk about, this is also the B1, B2s,
What's
accompanying memorandum for
Yeah.
accompanying. Or we can do a little more on prosecutorial discretion. I would do it again on prosecutorial discretion.
this one?
I would do a little more on it. I would talk about, I think what we should do,
So you want to do a little more on prosecution and then go to the entrepreneur, or you want to go on entrepreneur and then?
we should talk about the difference between what's a low priority and a high priority case.
Yeah.
And then talk about these, okay? So let's do a little bit on prosecutorial,
And
we'll
then
do
go
a little
back.
bit on this, and then a little bit on, maybe some stuff on I-9s, you know?
No, but unless that order, we little bit of more prosecutorial discretion, then we must go to the entrepreneurial. There's a lot of business there, entrepreneurial H1Bs and the EB2s.
Yeah, that's first. We'll do that
No,
first.
no, do first want to do that and then go to prosecutorial discretion,
Yeah.
or you want to do 2-3 minutes following up on the prosecutorial
Following
discretion?
up, and then
3-4
go.
quickly,
Yeah, perfect.
and then going to the entrepreneurial H1B and the EB2s.
Okay,
And then left, how much time is left? Then we can spend on the rest of the.
Let's make sure we say our hope, our prayers and wishes go out
That's
to
it.
all of the, the survivors of 9/11 and their families, and also that our deepest sorrows for those other families, and a reminder that foreign nationals are not terrorists. Terrorists are terrorists. Okay. so-
Start. I mean, I'll
You're
just
gonna do
say-
that, or you want me
You
to
do
do
that.
it?
I'll just say about my experience. I was sitting in front of the TV and
Okay, no
watching.
problem. Yeah,
2001.
Okay.
Okay.
Prakash?
Yeah, ready.
Yeah.
So also pulling, pushing and all that. We should. It's Madhvi. It says Madhvi. I'm not Madhvi. Hello viewers, welcome to our program on immigration and you. I am your immigration attorney Michael Phulwani, and once again we have with us our immigration attorney also, Mr. David Nachman.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for
Nachman,
having
and
me.
welcome on the program.
Thank you so much.
And in our program today, if you recall, we were doing something on the prosecutorial discretion.
Yes.
Very, very important. We talked to our viewers, we told them that the situation is changed as against what used to happen. ICE will arrest any person just because of the car accident, or not having a driver license, or just police arresting for some small thing. And that has changed a lot. And let us continue a little bit of discussion on that, in addition to what we told our viewers the last time.
Well, before we do that, Michael, since this is the anniversary of 9/11,
Oh, yes, 9/11
I think it's
today.
very important that we send out our.
Let me say something.
Sure, of course,
9/11, 2001, I'm sitting in the breakfast in the morning in front of the TV. All of a sudden, I saw a plane hitting the World Trade Center. And I thought, oh, what kind of pilot is this? Just an accident, right? And I said, my God, I thought it's going to go away, little fire, and that's it. And I was watching, another plane comes from the other side and hits hard. Then the smoke and the fire, and what a disaster, September 11, 2001, we never can forget. And really, really feel sorry about all those people that died in that event. And I know we all both sympathize with all the family members and others. You have something to say.
Of course, our heartfelt sorrows go out to any individuals and their families who were affected by the 9/11 tragedy, and it probably just warrants a moment to remind our viewers and anyone who's within eyeshot or earshot of this program that foreign nationals are not terrorists. Terrorists are terrorists, and that is just the way it is. And unfortunately, 9/11 really changed the immigration world, changed the practice for us, and I'm sure it did for you.
Okay, let's go back to the prosecutorial discretion. As we were explaining to our viewers last time, that the word prosecutorial, people don't understand necessarily, our viewers, is basically when those officials of the government that are required to enforce the laws, and those who are required to prosecute, means going to the court and trying to get a person deported or arrested and whatever. There has been a big change in the policy, and we did discuss at length in the last program. We're going to talk a couple of more things about that.
Well, on August 18th, Michael, you'll recall that there was an announcement made in which the government was going to go back and they were going to check all of the cases, I think it's 300,000 removal cases, to determine which cases are low priority cases and which cases are high priority cases. And unfortunately, we've been getting a tremendous number of phone calls about which cases are low priority cases and which ones are high priority cases. And it's very difficult to say specifically where that line is drawn. And obviously, we can't speak for the individuals who are exercising that prosecutorial discretion. However, in low priority cases, what they're doing is they are becoming, as you had mentioned in the last program, very liberal and not going after these individuals and not prosecuting aggressively those removal cases. However, there are other cases where what they're doing is transferring the assets and marshaling the resources of the government to go after those high priority cases. Those are individuals who are criminals, who have very significant criminal records, individuals who
Terrorists.
yeah, and individuals who, quote unquote, affect our national security. And that obviously on the, on 9/11, it's a perfect time to mention that that's exactly where the government's resources should be used, is to be looking at issues of national security and critical infrastructure to ensure that we are safe here in our country.
As we mentioned in our last program, there is some political area into this because President Obama promised about CIR, DREAM Act, and that was only a talk, nothing much was happening. On the other side, there were so many memorandums that told the government officials to enforce the law and arrest people, those who are illegally here. And that resulted into what you said, more than 300,000 people having been deported and all that. So a lot of these immigrant groups got very upset. That on one hand they are saying we'll do this, we'll do that. On the other hand, they keep on arresting people and deporting them. So the atmosphere changed a lot. I think the good sense came to the government authorities and the president. And as a result of which this memorandum has come into place, which is extremely good. And if in a couple of minutes I just want to say, what are the guidance in terms of what factors should ICE and the judges and the prosecutional attorneys take into consideration in making decision on these matters as to whether a person should be arrested or not, or the deportation proceedings should be terminated or not, or if there's a prior deportation, can that case be opened? Let me quickly mention what are the factors very quickly. A person's length of residence in the US, with particular consideration given to the presence while in lawful status, circumstances of the person's arrival in the US, manner of their entry, they came legally, illegally, they came as a young child, person's pursuit for education, they are referring to the DREAM Act in that way, those who would have qualified under the DREAM Act, those kind of people, whether the person or the person's immediate relative has served in the military, that David mentioned about the persons whose families the principal working in the military, person's criminal histories, including arrests, prior convictions, arrest warrants, that's being tougher on those kind of people. Whether the person, as David said earlier, poses a threat to the national security of the United States. Person's ties to the home country. Where all the family members are here, there's nobody back home. Person's age, with regard to the consideration given to the minors and little children or elderly people, remember, that also a good consideration. Whether the person is a US citizen or a green card holder, child or a parent. Whether a person is primary caretaker of a person whose physical or mental disability, David did mention about that also earlier. And whether the person's spouse suffers from, so not only the person himself, the wife, for example, or the parent suffers from physical or mental problems, whether the person is likely to be granted temporary or permanent residence. In other words, somebody already is married, has applied, the petition has been approved. So if they go forward and give him the break, open the deportation case, he can get the green card and based upon that. The person is likely to, victim of domestic violence, human trafficking, or person is currently cooperating with the government as a witness or in any other matters that.
That's a really critical point, Michael, because actually the memorandum that was originally passed on June 17th specifically took the position that individuals who are cooperating with the government
Yes.
and where potentially there would be U or T visas available to those people, they should not take a position to have those people removed from the United
So
States.
these are all the kind of factors when somebody is in trouble and he comes to you or me, and we have to then sit with the client to go over all the details, which of these considerations exist in that particular case, so that we can present a good brief or a good memo to the concerned authorities, the ICE. You can explain them that this is the memo, you should be nice, you should be liberal, you should be humanitarian issues that should be considered in that particular case, and then same thing happens